Destinies Part 1, The Empire of Solaris. Chapter 2, Celebrating the New Age. Cassiopeia, capital of the 6th province of Rigel, the Empire of Solaris, Cosmos Servitor. The day of Sirius was slowly fading away. The 6 friends had arranged to meet at the largest tavern on Thirst Street, and everyone agreed it was the largest tavern in the city. Well, the second largest tavern in Cassiopeia, which, let's be honest, helped avoid the snobs and ensured proper drinking. Thirst Street was a lively place, right in the heart of the merchant districts. Far to the southeast of the city, however, the imperial district breathed administrative rigidity. There stood the prefecture offices, the magistrate's headquarters, the prefect's residence, and of course the home of the province's governor, Lucian Vortem. Born from one of the oldest and most powerful dominari families, Vortem had chosen to live at the very center of the administrative quarter. Working tirelessly was, apparently, his passion, being neighbors with the province's most prestigious pleasure houses. A mere coincidence, officially at least, not far from there. On the same avenue as the provincial palace stood the residence of Magistrate Calvus Drion. Towering above the imperial district stood the Golden Spire. That was the true largest tavern in the city, a spiraling tower overlooking all of Cassiopeia, offering a breathtaking view of the illuminated merchant quarters. Inside were subtle gilded decorations, stained glass windows shimmering with shifting colors, and music performed by artists trained in the conservatories of Solaris. Entry was strictly controlled by the Praetorians. Dominari nobles, velarchs, high dignitaries, and influential guild members gathered there to discuss state secrets over glasses of ambroise, a rare spirit reserved for the elite. Right beside it stood the city's most famous pleasure house, the Astral Rose. The aspiring friends had no place in that world. They were not nobles, and not yet officers of sufficient rank to claim entry into such establishments. But for the moment they hardly cared. No, on that evening, as they did for all grand occasions, the 6 friends had chosen the Wooden Ghoul, less pretentious, far more alive. Located just steps away from the night market, in a colorful alleyway, the Wooden Ghoul overflowed with life at every hour. The walls were covered in murals and symbols scribbled by cheerful drunkards, while lutes, drums and flutes hung from the walls or dangled from the ceiling beams beside stranger instruments brought from distant lands. All ready to awaken at the slightest note, merchants, bards, veterans, rogues, off-duty soldiers, and even a few chosen, those favored by the Astrids, gathered there to drink spiced beer, share street food, or dance to the rhythm of drums from Arvenheim or the Merchant League. The owner, Varek the Chipped, a former smuggler turned local legend, was respected by everyone. Not a single day passed without him throwing out some dubious anecdote about his years on the run. Cosmos was in a joyful mood. He laughed with his brother-in-arms, Victor. For once they had arrived early. Magnus, true to himself, showed up 5 minutes before the appointed time. Anastasi, punctual as ever, entered precisely at 10 o'clock, accompanied by Casilda. Once seated, the 5 companions waited. 5 long minutes, far too long for Cosmos and Victor. The tavern assistant had just brought them fresh, ice-cold beers. 2 more minutes passed. The beers were beginning to warm. That was too much. Cosmos sprang from his chair and slammed his palm against the table. Right! Lavinia will always be late. That'll never change. So let's begin. They raised their mugs. The twins emptied theirs faster than it took to count to 5. And almost exactly 5 seconds later, the tavern assistant, experienced and watchful, was already bringing 2 more. Elite service. An hour later, 5 musicians from the neighboring table stood up and began to play. 2 of them wandered between the tables with drums, flutes, and gittans in hand. The atmosphere rose. The crowd stomped their feet to the rhythm, and it was precisely at that moment that Lavinia Servitor made her entrance. Ah, Magnus smiled. The 5 fingers of the hand are finally reunited. Lavinia apologized with flair. She danced with each of her friends, naturally ending with Victor. Everyone knew those two were not exactly just friends, but the mood shifted abruptly when a short man, barely 5'6", soaking wet and utterly drunk, stumbled forward and bumped into the large and broad-shouldered Magnus. Cosmos frowned. A provocation. The man did not even apologize. "Hey, idiot!" Cosmos shouted. "Forget it," Magnus said. "He's completely drunk." Cosmos, true to his hot-blooded nature, approached the man and tapped him on the shoulder. No reaction. He remained there motionless, back turned. Victor, still dancing with Lavinia, watched the scene uncertainly. Was there going to be trouble? Cosmos tried to forcefully turn the man around. The stranger shoved him back violently, wounded in his pride and somewhat drunk himself. Cosmos looked around, grabbed Anastasi's mug within reach, and poured the last of the beer onto the fool's back. At last, the man turned around, and without a word, he emptied his own beer onto Cosmos. That was when Victor stepped in. Still in the spirit of celebration, he stole a mug from a nearby table and, with a mocking grin, slowly poured it over the little provocateur's hair. Pause. 3 seconds of silence. The man looked down at his soaked shoes, slowly raised his head, and stared at Victor. Then, without warning, he drew back his fist with considerable slowness, nearly losing his balance in the process. Cosmos intercepted the punch with his right hand. With his left, he answered with a sharp blow, and the fight erupted, but the stranger fought well. Very well. Even Victor struggled to restrain him. Soon, the rightful owners of the stolen mug stood up to defend the honor of their beer. They sided with the stranger. The twins suddenly found themselves 2 against 7. Magnus, torn between his legendary sense of honor and his loyalty to his friends, finally rose to his feet. "I swear this goes against my principles," he muttered before charging headfirst into the brawl. By himself, he neutralized 3 opponents. One was sent crashing against a window pane. Anastasia, meanwhile, tried in vain to separate the fighters. But tables were already flying. Mugs shattered. Chaos took hold. The brawl spread throughout the tavern. Anastasia grabbed Lavinia and Casilda and decided to escort them home. For safety, he protected them all the way outside the tavern, while the interior transformed into a battlefield. After a good 15 minutes of disordered fistfighting, a squad of 20 legionnaires stormed into the tavern. Order was restored. In their own way,